Okay, thank you to all the merit team leaders who provided those pre-recorded summaries, and of course the complete merit analyses are on the website that everybody can access if they need some review. So the next step in this process is to take a look at this spreadsheet that we have in front of us. In this spreadsheet, as we saw previously, lists all of the pest crop analyses that were done, as well as the original ranking that's in the yellow on the far left, and then in the red or below the red box is the merit analysis score from the merit teams that we just heard from. And so broadly, when we look at this, what we can see is that we have, I'm just counting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 to consider, and they range from an original ranking of 2 to a original ranking of 14. So a little bit of flexibility in moving some projects up or down and tightening that overall ranking list. And the other thing I want to comment on is that about half of the projects that we're looking at here are from a single insect pest, an invasive pest called the spotted wing Drosophila. And then there's, after that, we have 3 projects that are on the same disease target, downy mildew. And then there is, of course, 1 project that is tomato leaf miners that is separate or independent from all the rest. I have one, before I open up for some comments, I do have one practical question for our leadership, and that is the question of whether or not the dry bulb onion fall into the same crop group as green onion, or do they really need to be seen as completely separate projects that one would not benefit the other?
This is Catherine Holman from IR4. I think for the most part, they could be considered together. There was just a difference in the MRLs for the oxythiopyperlin with the green onion versus the dry bulb onion. And that may be due to there are different registrants for each one. So it was a little confusing as to what was actually registered for each one. So that's why it was split out. There's difference between Corteva and Syngenta. Okay, so
thank you, Catherine. So I think we would not look at these as the same project, but they would be similar to the comments that were made on the raspberry and blackberry, that if the raspberry received a high priority, there would be benefit to other crops that are in the same crop group. So that's just something to keep in mind. But mostly what we want to do is look at our original ranking. We want to look at our merit analysis scores, and then speak up through the chat question option on your thoughts. We have also, if there's additional questions or clarifications that are needed, let's get those. But otherwise, I'd like to hear some thoughts from people on the call. And as I mentioned before, if you look at this list and you say, if your opinion is that the original ranking should remain the same, we want to hear that, because that helps us in building consensus. But if there is anything that you think should be moved up or down in ranking, now is a good time to make comments or ask questions.
Okay, John, we have a comment or question from Jeffrey Onan. Jeffrey, go ahead.
Yeah, I think going back to the previous comment which was made on the crop grouping, we should really put that into consideration if we really have to look at the ranking again. Because when you look at some of the pests that are really shared across a particular crop group, and I do believe at any point the solutions really might be the same or cross-cutting between the particular crop group. So we need to look at the crop groupings we can address that and then revisit the ranking.
Okay, so the comment was an emphasis on considering which of the projects have combined benefit because of crop grouping if they are listed as a high priority. Is that a fair summary of your comment?
Yeah, this is really the what I'm driving at, yeah.
Okay, so that's a and should be considered. So let me just give an example. If it appears that raspberry spotted wing Drosophila is going to end up with a high ranking, whether that's number 1, number 2, number 3, we don't know that yet. But if there was consensus that it was a high ranking, then we know that the blackberry would end up benefiting from that. And there may be another project, maybe it's another downy mildew project or a tomato project that we'd want to, that could move up, for example. But what I want to do is hear from other people on the call of what their thoughts are on this matter.
So John, we have a cue from Sandra Alcaraz.
Hi there. Quick comment, side comment is NovaSource has a registration for spotted wing Drosophila on blueberry in Europe. This is separate from your comment before. And we have a registration in Belgium. And our intention is in next year is to carry out all the work that needs to be done to get a central region registration. So I don't know if that helps moving this down in the priority list, but yeah, the registration is in Belgium, John. And so we will have a central region registration and we intend to carry out more efficacy work. So that might alleviate a little bit what you have here.
So Nova, that's a trade.
NovaSource TKI.
Okay, so it's a biological.
It's Surround WP, sorry.
Oh, Surround WP, got it.
Yeah, we have a registration in Belgium for Drosophila Suzukii on blueberries. So we intend to get a central region registration next year.
Okay, so that's a good comment, is that in terms of the demand for solutions for spotted wing Drosophila and blueberry, it appears that in the EU there's efforts to have Surround WP, which is a particle film technology,
correct,
registered, and so that just adds more tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
One thing I know is that would be exempt from tolerance because
correct,
it's food grade material. So that adds more solutions. So that's good. It doesn't address any of the harmonization issues that were captured in our merit analysis, but it does provide another tool in the toolbox. Thank you for your comment.
yeah.
So John, we have a question. Are all crop pest combinations important in one or more geographical regions?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Are all the crop pest combinations important in one or more geographical regions?
So the countries that identified through the original vote ranking spotted wing Drosophila as a high priority in the range of berry crops that we have listed in this Excel sheet. The only answer I can give is that for all those countries, it was listed at very high as a pest problem that needed additional solutions. I think there's variability from country to country on which solutions are the most important to them. For example, in the United States and to some degree Canada, there are more solutions in the toolbox for spotted wing Drosophila in the range of berry crops, raspberry, blueberry, cherry, but there are serious problems with MRL harmonization with the UK, EU, and other countries. So sorting out which are the most important is probably beyond what we can accomplish today. But I think the basic answer is that spotted wing Drosophila is pretty high importance in all the countries that ranked it high on these crops. Okay, I would like to hear more comments about whether the ranking should stay the same or whether we should do some changes in the ranking based on looking at merit scores and original ranking. That's the purpose of this session right now, is to look at these and see if we want to make any changes or we like the way that the original ranking sets right now.
John, we have a comment from Adam Doxford wanting to confirm that the EU salad onions and bulb onions require separate data sets. We would wish to support data sets for both if merged into one project. That's from Adam Doxford, speaking on behalf of Bolette Powell-Neve from the UK. Excuse the mispronunciation.
So Catherine's comment was that for a particular active ingredient, of course, the residue data would equally suit the dry onion as it would suit the green onion. The one complication was that there's a different registrant for each of those crops on the same, on one of the particular AIs. I think that's not a complication for some of the other solutions that were common across those two. Does that answer your question, Adam?
This is Catherine from Meyer 4. I just want to explain it a little bit more. So we would have to do a residue study that would include both the use for the green onion and the dry bulb onion, so regions that would satisfy both. But as John mentioned, for the particular chemistry oxythiopyperlin, there's differences in what trials would be required for each, and maybe the registrant can elaborate on that one further.
John, while we're waiting for that, we have a question from Andrea from MGAP DGSA. from Uruguay. We have a proposed a study in hemp. Was it considered?
I responded to her in the chat group in Spanish. So what I said, it was the among the 4,000 combinations proposed, it was not in the it didn't result in the priority top 15. So I'm explaining that to her.
We have a cue from Dan Kunkel from IR4 headquarters. Dan?
All right, thank you. Hi, John, and thanks for taking the lead here. I'm just curious why raspberry. I have a question and then maybe a comment. So, and maybe it's related to one of your previous questions you had, but why raspberry keeps coming up to the top? Is it the production? Is it the pest is more significant on that crop? Were there a lot of countries that selected it as a high priority? And then I also noticed in the merit analysis, there's a very broad number of solutions provided. So to me, that looks like a very good project to keep on the top. And if you could comment, maybe some of those products could translate to some of the other crops too, some of the solutions, could they also be used on obviously the blackberry, but also blueberry and cherries for other spotted wing Drosophila control? Thank you.
Yeah, Dan, thank you for your question. And I think there's three reasons why the raspberry has received is in the standing that it is. Number one was that the original ranking was very high compared to others. My sense is that that's related to the level of sensitivity that raspberry has to this pest. That if you had a choice test and you had raspberries and blueberries and cherries and currants all in the same arena, raspberry would be of the highest infested by that pest. And at the same time, it has fewer tools, registered tools in the toolbox compared to other fruit crops. And therefore there is that disparity. And then the last is that there were quite a few comments from our merit teams on raspberry about the need for harmonization. And so it may have also to do with the importance of raspberry in global trade compared to some other fruit crops.
John, we have a comment from Carmen Tu from in the US, from Corteva. Different residue studies are needed on spring and dry onions.
Okay, so that's important. That shouldn't weigh terribly heavy on our process today, but it will be very relevant in the next stage that follows. So that's good to get that factual information. Let's look again, everybody, at our spreadsheet. I wish that I could see the entire spreadsheet. Some of it falls below so that we can't see all the crops. I would rather see all the projects than all the comments at the moment. Okay, here we go. So let's look at this and think about whether anything should be reordered or reordered in the sense of getting a higher ranking. If we look at this, we see, for example, tomato leaf miner was ranked close to the bottom of this group that we have under consideration, and yet the merit analysis is fairly high. So I'm just prodding our group for discussion here. Should that ranking change? Should it be above the blackberry, which would be a smaller number in ranking than blackberry because of the high merit score? I'm not promoting one answer or another, but I'm trying to get the entire group to think about whether the ranking as it stands is reflective of the whole process or whether we need to make some changes.
John, we have a cue from Carmen Tiu from Cortiva.
Yes, hello everyone. I just wanted to make a point relative to, I mean, from the perspective of using this data for registrations as well as for Codex MRLs. We will probably submit just one package. If you're talking about tomato, tuta absoluta, you know, when we make submissions both for national registrations as well to Codex, we just do, you know, request of an MRL on tomato for control of tuta. It's rarely done any kind of difference between field versus greenhouse uses. We've also learned, historically speaking, you know, residues from the same use patterns in field versus greenhouse conditions are also generating similar residue data, such that the MRL and the label extension will be done by a crop basis, not differently from greenhouse versus field, unless the use patterns will be significantly different between the two of them, which, as I said, it rarely happens. So from that perspective, in my view, those two projects from greenhouse and field on tomato to control leaf miners could be eventually merged into one, because, as I said, the data will be probably used as one package, both for national and international submissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen, for that comment. So at a practical level, for what we are doing today, what we can do is we can be mindful of how the tomato leaf miner project ranked in the greenhouse. We can't go back and merge it, but we can be mindful of how the ranking here under temperate field will impact the overall ability to proceed greenhouse and temperate tomato leaf miner projects together, as Karma had explained. So again, when we look at this, the question for the group is the overall ranking of 12, which might end up being less because we have fewer than 12 projects, but is that where we want the tomato leaf miner to be? Or do we want it to be like an 8 above the blackberry? Again, I'm just trying to get comments from the group, whether they like the original ranking or they want to make some changes based on our discussion here and the merit analysis and the vote ranking. I will, just for the point of discussion, I will also, as I look at the hops downy mildew, it's ranked number 6, which is about in the middle. But when I look at the merit analysis score, it's quite high. So question for the group, should that ranking final or end of discussion ranking change, or do people like it where it is?
John, this is Michael. I just wanted to make up some follow-up comments. First of all, thank you, Carmen, for your useful comments. But I did want to note, you know, depending on the active that we're dealing with, and especially the use pattern potentially might be different in the greenhouse and the field in relation to the tomato tuta study. So I would think it would be useful to consider them as separate for the greenhouse and temperate. In addition, there may also be a different use pattern between temperate and tropical. Now, overall, regardless of which one of those end up being the one that generates the most residues, that's at the end of the day, there's only going to be one MRL, and that's going to be the one that is the highest residues. So at this point in time, I would not encourage the thought of merging them across the greenhouse versus temperate versus tropical.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And I think for the practical aspect of this session, we're looking at that as it is, and I'm looking for consensus or proposals to change the ranking. And if there's those who are quiet because they think the original ranking is good, I'd like to hear some thumbs up or comments so that we know for sure that we have consensus on that or changes.
John, we have a cue from Jim Chaput. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment, it's probably not going to make a huge difference, but it's in terms of strawberry and blackberry, to me, it makes more sense to rank strawberry higher simply because it's a representative crop for a crop group or subgroup, whereas blackberry would be covered automatically by raspberry. So in terms of ranking, they should be switched. That's just a suggestion. Simply because blackberry, you don't need to do work on blackberry. That would be covered automatically by raspberry. Thank you.
Jim, when I'm looking at the sheet, unless I'm looking at it incorrectly, I think strawberry is ranked above blackberry in terms of the original ranking, correct? I don't disagree with you at all.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yep, you're right.
Yep. Okay.
We have a cue from Dirk Drost.
Yes, Dirk.
So, John, thank you very much. I like the idea that you're trying to move now towards some conversation around how will the discussion end up. And so I encourage everyone to help John by stepping in and making your comments now about how things should end at the end of the discussion. So it does sound like there's one suggestion that Jim Chaput just had, and perhaps there's others too. So thank you very much from me for John, for the way you're trying to lead the conversation.
John, we have a cue from Craig Dunlap.
Hopefully you can hear me. My internet's been a bit ropey the last 15 minutes or so. A couple of comments. I'm still, or Syngenta's still working with Veronica on tomato and leaf miners. We've got a couple of solutions in our portfolio that would fit this use, but also glasshouse uses, but needs a bit more investigation. And yeah, so we're very willing to support that. And also a comment with regards to residues and representative crops. We just need to be careful if we're talking about US representative crops or Codex representative crops. They are sometimes similar, sometimes different. And we just need to keep that in mind when talking about representative crops. And that was with regards to blackberry, raspberry, etc. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comment and that clarification. That is important. So Maddie, we're waiting for other comments and consensus, but why don't we go down under the green box, because we don't have a number one, and give the group a look at how the ranking would be as we adjust for missing projects, so that number 2 would become number 1, number 3 would be 2, and let's just go down, and that will tell people where we're at. And then again, very open and interested in thoughts on anything that should move up or not, or down.
Okay, we have a cue from Carmen too.
Yes, thank you. 2 quick points. From the perspective of, registrant submissions and all that, I would suggest Raspberry and Blueberry will go together as one project with a slash. So like Raspberry slash Blackberry, it's not, it's gonna be the same scenario for the use. So I don't see a reason, unless somebody wants to speak up, why do they have to be kept separately? And second point I wanted to make is I noticed in your merit analysis for the Drosophila Suzuki, you have had from Corteva spinosad mentioned. I wanted to clarify that both spinosad and spinetoram are useful to control the spotted wing Drosophila. So the spinosad, it's only used whenever people are using it for organic agriculture. But conventional agriculture, we also have spinetoram on many countries' labels to control this pest. Thank you.
John, we have a cue from Adam Doxford. Adam, go ahead.
Oh, there we go. Hi there. I completed the merit analysis for the UK for spotted wing Drosophila. I specifically mentioned spinosad because we don't yet have a spinetoram registration in the UK, and it seems like it may be a little way off. I do agree with Carmen's point about rolling Blackberry and Raspberry into one project because we can essentially extrapolate between the 2 crops for the EU. That was pretty much what I wanted to say.
Adam, you were breaking up enough that it wasn't clear whether you finished or you were cut off.
Yeah, sorry. I was finished.
Okay. Thank
you. Did you get my point?
Actually, I would like you to repeat that one more time, please.
Okay. Please let me know if I'm still breaking up while I speak. I'll try to speak a bit more clearly. So I completed the merit analysis for SWD in the UK. We are looking at spinosad and spinetoram, but for the moment, spinetoram is it does not have a registration in the UK, and I believe other parts of the EU. So yeah, we do acknowledge that that's a possibility, but not an immediate solution. I also agree with Carmen that Blackberry and Raspberry could be considered under one project because there's a lot of possibility of extrapolation between the 2 crops. Is that clearer?
Yes, thank you. So what I'm not sure of, and Dirk or others may be able to confirm, is do we have enough confidence that Blackberry will be picked up by the final ranking of Raspberry such that its current end of discussion ranking should drop to 9 because it will benefit from the higher ranking of Raspberry, or is that not a safe interpretation of some of the comments we've had in the last 5 minutes?
So John, I want to jump in to see if, Dirk, do you have a comment that you wanted to add at this point?
Thank you very much. I just think we should just dial back a minute to Carmen's comments about the importance of blueberry. And perhaps blueberry is should be ranked higher underneath the raspberry because of her comments. And rather, I wouldn't support necessarily combining the two projects at this time. I think that could be done later, but it could be, if it's a reflection of the value and importance, then I think it should be done. As far as the placement of blackberry and John, I just defer to someone with more experience than me in terms of the regulatory similarities or differences. Thank you.
If I could just make a comment, John, just to confirm, for Codex, it's raspberry or blackberry. So it's similar to the US for the crop group. So with regard to blackberry, I think where it is fine then. And if we did a residue study, we'd do it on raspberry and or blackberry.
So it actually suggests to me that the blackberry could go to a 9 and there would be no harm to the importance of it and the people that want to find a solution. But the blueberry, I think, is a little bit different because it's not the same crop group that I'm aware of, at least in the U.S. And some of the solutions I think were slightly different. So I'm a little more reluctant, unless there's consensus in the group. I'm concerned about moving the blueberry to a number 2 if the onion downy mildew people view that as a high priority. It had higher merit analysis and it was ranked higher than the blueberry in the original vote. But I'm open. I'm listening to what the consensus is on this call.
Yeah, this is Catherine. I was hoping that others on my team could comment, as I provided all I could for the downy mildew. It appeared that both the dry bulb and the green onion were significant issues. I'm hoping somebody else on the call could provide some input.
John, we had a cue from Kiefer Kuchana. Kiefer, do you want to go ahead? Okay, you're on mute. So Kiefer, feel free to enter your comment in the chat while we work on your audio.
Well, I'll make an observation while we're waiting for Kiefer. It may be a part of a logical consensus that's forming, is that our number 1 and our number 2 were very high in the original ranking. They received high merit analysis scores, and in both cases, registrations for those first 2 would have positive impacts on other crops that were included in this process. So that's unique, I think, for those 2, and it, I think, builds some confidence that the process is working correctly. So we have approximately 5 minutes left. This would be a time if anybody's looking at this discussion ranking and they like it or don't like it, this would be a good time to share your thoughts?
Okay, John, we have a cue from Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, good morning, John. This is Chris Dulshoff here from Ontario, Canada. Just wanted to make a comment that I do support the rankings as they are. And then a follow-up question. I think Dan asked a little bit earlier on the call about the applicability of the Raspberry SWD solutions to the other berry crops on this list. Do you believe, John, that those same solutions in raspberry would be effective on those other crops? In that case, is this simply a matter of generating the residues for the other berry crops, or is there some efficacy work that still needs to be done with the raspberries to figure out their effects on SWD? Thank you.
So that was a good question. Based on my experience, the way I would answer that question is that the insecticides that are listed as solutions in raspberry would very likely have the same performance on other fruit crops that are on our list here. The difference is that in raspberry, there were more problems to be solved related to harmonizing MRLs. And so if those problems don't exist in another crop, then even though the product is registered, it may not require the attention. And then the last comment I have is that, of course, some of the biopesticides or non-chemical solutions, if a registration for a crop requires the additional data, then of course that would have to be attained. And I think in many cases, those data would be relatively easy to gain. Thank you for the question.
We had a question from Kiefer Kuchana. Kiefer, if you could turn yourself off mute, go ahead. Or if you're unable to do that, you can go ahead and enter your comment through chat.
Okay, while we're waiting for that chat, we have just a few minutes left, but it sounds to me like everybody on the call is happy with the end of discussion rankings.
Okay, John, we have a comment from Sarah Ragnarsson. I'll go ahead and read it. Sarah says, also support the current ranking. They have been ranked higher from the beginning, received higher merit analysis scores, and can be combined with other prioritized projects.
Thank you for your support. That's glad to have the consensus comment. Did we get a chat from Kiefer or no?
We did not.
Okay. I think we're close. I think we're within a minute of running out of time, and we'll hand it back over to Jerry Barron.